A new law banning keeping dogs outside in bad weather conditions goes into effect today. Meet the Brazos Valley woman instrumental in making it happen. And a new state law on trans students competing in sports. Why some say it's unfair to these athletes. Your KRHD News starts right now.
Connecting the Brazos Valley. This is KRHD News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us at 5 o'clock. I'm Hallie Jones. A new state bill signed into law will change the way many Texans care for their pets. KRHD reporter Rebecca Fiedler breaks down the legislation and its implications.
Starting today for the state of Texas, dogs now have new legal protections in terms of their safety and well-being. After years of animal rights advocates pushing for changes, Texas Senate Bill 5 is now officially operational as a law. Signed by Governor Abbott back in October, the law is enacted today, essentially barring pet owners from chaining their dogs or leaving the animals outside in storms.
The biggest changes that we're seeing with this law are, one, the requirement of shelter, and particularly the requirement for the type of shelter that you have to have. And it means that the animal, in this case, the new law requires that the animal has a shelter that they can stand in, sit up in, turn around in.
Sergeant Chris Fraley oversees the Animal Control Unit for the Brazos County Sheriff's Office. He and his colleagues will be enforcing the law, which is considered a Class C misdemeanor, punishable by up to $500 in fines. But the first step for Fraley won't necessarily be a slew of arrests. Rather, it will be teaching opportunities.
You know, our goal, though, is not just to go out and heavily enforce. We want to educate the community. You know, we want, hey, this is what the law is, this is what the law requires, and this is what our expectations are. And after we've spoken to people and try to educate them, if we don't gain compliance, then, you know, they'll be enforced.
Animal rights advocates such as Fraley and local nonprofit leader Judy Launez say that many people who neglect their dogs are not doing so intentionally. The new law does permit dogs to be tied with certain materials and to be kept outside if adequate shelter from inclement weather is available.
You can, put these into the ground and you've got the lead here, the tie out, or you can run the trolley system.
Launez has worked with Brazos Valley Congress members such as Representative John Rainey to ensure their vote in support of the bill. While Launez would ultimately like to see dogs untethered completely, she feels this legislation is a step in the right direction, giving officers more structure in their enforcement.
That's why I love this bill, because it's so tightly defined about what you can use and cannot use to tether your dog or to keep it in.
If you'd like to read that law in full, we'll provide you with a link on our website at krhdnews.com. Reporting in Bryan, Rebecca Fiedler, KRHD News.
Starting today, students in UIL athletic competitions must compete in the sport based on their sex at birth. This comes after the passing of House Bill 25. This morning, the Save Women's Sports Organization met, calling with a win for biological females, saying this promotes fairness. The group and several sponsors say athletes born male have a competitive advantage against other females, strictly coming down to biology. There's been some pushback in the transgender community, some saying this law is discriminatory and simply unfair.
If you're a teenager, do you want to be told that you're not worthy, or you're illegal, or you don't matter? And that's something that every teenager would have a problem with. But for trans people in general, it's a lot harder to deal with. And it's something that reverberates throughout the entire trans community, doesn't affect just the children. And it's something that affects the entire LGBTQ plus community.
It should be said this law does not affect co-ed sports like UIL cheerleading. Texans head back to the polls soon for the 2022 primary election. Early voting starts next month, but the deadline for registration is January 31st. To register, you'll need to fill out and submit a paper voter registration application or print out the online application and mail it to your voter registrar. Applications must be postmarked by January 31st to be accepted. You can check your voter registration status on the Texas Secretary of State website. Texas A&M Forest Service is responding to a request for assistance with a fire in Bastrop County. Currently, the fire is estimated to be 150 acres with zero containment. The fire started in the same area as the Bastrop Forest Fire in 2011, a fire that became the most destructive in Texas history. Residents in the Pine Hill Drive neighborhood have been asked to evacuate, and roads are closed along East Highway 21 in the area. Free COVID tests are available to order a day early. Every home in the U.S. is able to order 4 free at-home rapid antigen tests through covidtest.gov. All you need is your name and address. Tests will be delivered through USPS and will begin shipping out in late January. The United Way of the Brazos Valley is now recruiting volunteer drivers in preparation for the launch of the Ride to Health program. Ride to Health will connect local area drivers with patients needing transportation services for non-emergency health services. Drivers who sign up will take patients to and from healthcare appointments, mental health services, and pharmacies.
The drivers are basically going to be receiving through a website an email and a text letting them know that that the drive has been set up, so they know when to pick up and where to pick up the potential patient, and then they will drive the patient and drop them off at their healthcare appointment.
The United Way is hoping to get between 10 and 20 volunteers to sign up, and those interested in becoming a volunteer driver can register online through the volunteer tab on the United Way of the Brazos Valley's website. Congregation Beth Israel is moving toward healing following Saturday's standoff. The synagogue hosted a special service Monday to begin to put this terrible event in the past. The service was held at a neighboring church, White's Chapel United Methodist. Saturday's standoff ended with all hostages alive and safe. The suspect, a British national, was killed by police. Authorities are working to figure out a motive. On Monday, the FBI called the attack, quote, a terrorism-related matter in which the Jewish community was targeted.
No seatbelts, speeding, impaired people behind the wheel. These trends of risky driving skyrocketed during the pandemic, and that's led to more crashes and deaths than pre-COVID years, and the numbers are staying high. We're talking an average of 100 people dying in crashes every day. Another 7,500 are hurt in crashes daily. Estimates from the first half of 2021 show a nearly 20% spike in crash deaths. That's the highest 6-month increase ever recorded in the history of the Fatality Analysis Reporting System. Now, all of these facts are laid out in a new annual report card on states' highway safety laws.
While most of these laws you would think would be commonsensical, they are very challenging to get moved through state legislatures.
Advocates for highway and auto safety has identified 16 basic traffic laws proven to reduce crashes. They fall under 5 areas: various seatbelt rules, child passenger laws, teen driving restrictions, and impaired and distracted driving consequences. No state has all 16. Some are even missing some of the most basic laws, like requiring everyone in the car to buckle up.
Primarily, what we need in each state legislature is a committed and devoted champion who identifies, who picks up a report, sees that there's a problem, and makes the determination that they are going to do something to save lives this year. And it can happen.
The increase in crashes impacts everyone. The report estimates the financial burden at $292 billion a year. That includes medical bills, property damage, and loss of work. That's like everyone paying a nearly $900 annual crash tax. A public poll shows a majority of people aren't aware of the substantial increase in traffic deaths, but they are concerned about what they're seeing on roads and would likely support new traffic safety measures. Drones have been used in farming overseas for decades, but they're now starting to play a greater role in the U.S. Ahead in our lineup, how they work in the fields and the benefits farmers could see. The number of children testing positive for COVID-19 is soaring. The American Academy of Pediatrics reports nearly 11% of all child COVID cases since the start of the pandemic have come in the last 2 weeks. It's making things difficult in pediatric units of hospitals, which is where Dan Grossman went to see how doctors and nurses there are doing.
So Lorianne, you're doing this from home, yeah?
I am.
We have been here before. So how are we feeling about doing this?
Feeling pretty good, I guess.
We've heard from these voices.
I think this time last year, we were all really hopeful that we wouldn't still be here.
Just never quite like this.
It's sad that we are currently in this peak situation.
This situation, pediatric ICU director Dr. Tracy Butler finds herself in
Some days are better than others, and
is the same one pediatric nurse Steph Miller finds herself in. Same with Dr. Reginald Washington and Laura Ann Cleveland, all of whom are on the front lines of our nation's hospitals, saving the lives of kids. If someone came up to you and asked you the very simple question, how are you doing? What would you tell them?
Depends on the day. Some days are tougher than others, but we put on our big boy pants and we get back on the saddle and we come back to work. Patients rely on us.
Currently, those patient numbers are soaring. According to the CDC, COVID hospitalizations for children under 5 have risen 48% in the U.S. since the beginning of December, the largest jump for the age group since the beginning of the pandemic. And new hospitalizations for kids under 18 are at a record level as well, 797 each day. It has made the day-to-day for these doctors and nurses difficult.
Responding to crisis is normal, but you usually have a lot of adrenaline when you respond to crisis. And so responding to a crisis where it's a long-term crisis, I think that's the element that has made this the most challenging.
I think the burnout is cumulative. Unfortunately, it's made it harder to get back into the game and not feel a sense of dread sometimes.
we're all tired, but we all just still step up and continue to do our job even in these times.
Continuing to do their job. If nothing else, it's that relentlessness that has defined these men and women in a pandemic that has been equally unrelenting.
People would ring bells and shout and everything at 8 o'clock. That's gone away, but the stress on the medical profession has not gone away. I think people are kind of, at some extent, taking COVID for granted, where in the healthcare profession you can't do that because we live it every day.
The days are long, they are hard, and to many of us, they might seem foreign as we look in from the outside.
I smile when you ask, what is it like taking care of kids? Because I consider it a gift.
But to these first responders, answering their call comes as naturally as anything else.
We just continue to work hard and be there for each other, because if we're not here, no one else is. So we're going to be here for our kids and our community, so we're doing it.
I'm Dan Grossman.
And we have seen a few clouds across the area for today. Nothing that's going to produce any moisture for us right now. As a front moves in tomorrow, though, there could be a slight chance of a shower across the area. Then it turns markedly colder, and we have a few other things to talk about as well. So let's get into it. Clouds and radar showing things are pretty quiet across the region right now. Just a few high clouds drifting across the state. But there is a storm system that will be approaching from the northwest, and that's going to bring a cold front into the area. So Wednesday morning, we're looking at winds probably in the 5 to 15 mile per hour range. Nothing too bad just yet. And most of the day on Wednesday is going to be spent out ahead of a cold front. By 4 o'clock, that front will be entering the Highway 79 corridor to our north from Hearn to Rockdale over towards Centerville, and winds start to shift to the north and become rather gusty as we move into Wednesday evening. 20 to 30 mile per hour winds and temperatures falling through the 40s. So it's going to get cold in a hurry Wednesday night into Thursday morning, and through the day on Thursday, those winds will stay in the 15 to 25 mile per hour range. And we may not get out of the 30s on Thursday as well. Then we have to talk about our future track here, and things stay relatively quiet on Wednesday. There could be a couple of showers, isolated thunderstorms as we head into the afternoon as that cold front works in. So about a 20% chance you'll get wet out there. Then it clouds over Thursday morning. Still dry, but during the day Thursday, there will be some moisture across the area, and we may have a chance for some sleet pellets, some snow flurries as well. This is keeping it rather light. Other models are a little heavier. We'll continue to track this closely. No watches in effect as of right now, so that's something we will continue to watch closely. So tonight, temperatures will be into the 50s north, 60s south. Should make it to the 70s again tomorrow, and then things change as we make our way into Thursday. Probably not getting out of the 30s, and we may have a warming trend, though, as we head toward the weekend.
These days, farming is looking a little bit different. Special drones are being used to spray crops and even plant seeds. The technology is fairly new to the U.S., though others overseas have been using it for decades. Stephanie Sandoval shows us how these drones work and how they can help farmers.
They're called agricultural spray drones and need very little human intervention to work. All you have to do is map out your field and select which spots you want to spray.
For 90% of the time, you don't even have to touch the remote. The drone's just flying.
They can be used to spray chemicals like pesticides on crops and even seeds, coming in handy in tough-to-reach areas.
So when a farmer needs something applied on his crop from the air, right now his only option is to call the helicopter airplane company, and they just broadcast the whole field. Instead, if a farmer has a drone, they can just hit only the spots that need it. So they're saving chemical, which is better for the environment and better for their cost.
He also pointed out the drones can be used to plant cover crops, which can slow erosion and improve soil health before harvesting crops. The technology is fairly new to the U.S., but drones like this have been used overseas for decades now, primarily in Asia.
Due to the abundance of rice paddies over there in Asia, it actually makes a lot of sense because that's wet terrain and it's much better serviced by flying drone vehicles versus terrestrial like tractor vehicles.
Arthur Erickson, the co-founder and CEO of agricultural drone maker Helio, believes this technology is a game changer for the agriculture industry.
The drones are interesting because not only can they do what's traditionally done better, cheaper, faster, less labor, more automated, but they're unlocking kind of a whole new way to approach farming that previously wasn't available.
As for the future of these devices, Erickson is hopeful the technology will take off.
The idea that you're going to start having these drones going out on their own, so they're charging themselves, they're refilling themselves, and they're just kind of scanning these fields and making decisions in real time and solving them before even you have to get involved. That's going to be the future of this technology, I think, in the next 2 to 3 years.
A recently released analysis by the market research firm Shear Analytics and Insights estimates agricultural drones will be a $6.5 billion industry within 10 years, as farmers here and abroad look to deal with labor shortages and shifting trends toward vegetarianism.
Work priorities continue to change during the pandemic, and we're getting a new look at where the future of work is headed and where to find a growing number of opportunities if you're thinking about a new job. LinkedIn has released its list of the fastest growing jobs. It looked at trends over the past 5 years to come up with this. No surprise here, number one on the list is a vaccine specialist. Many people getting these jobs have a background in medical sales. Now you can see the top 10 jobs here on your screen include diversity and inclusion managers. Andrew Seaman with LinkedIn says they're seeing more jobs recently that focus on the well-being of employees. Also in the top jobs are business development representatives, and this is also for people with a background in sales.
A ton of the jobs have at least 35% of the open positions as remote options right now, which means that, if you're looking for work on LinkedIn, you could toggle a switch, and that quite a bit of those jobs are going to allow you the flexibility to work from home or wherever you feel most comfortable.
He says remote work is most likely here to stay as a way to keep workers happy. If a position doesn't list it, he says workers have the power now to ask about it in the negotiation process. Just make sure you have the skills for it ahead of time.
Soft skills are really those that allow you to sort of have those good energy with your coworkers, with customers, with other people like that. So that's good communication, that's being a team player, those types of skills. And especially if you want to work remotely or have those flexibility options, those are incredibly important because the people need those skills to really thrive in that environment.
Courses around interview preparation, product management, and enterprise marketing are some of the top things people on LinkedIn say they've learned just before getting hired. LinkedIn learning courses around those skills are free until February 1st.
World News Tonight is just ahead, and we're back in 30 minutes for KRHD News at 6. Until then.